Good day, my name is Daniel-Awong, and today I will be talking about youth homelessness, causes of youth homelessness, and shelters that provide aid for youth homelessness.
The number one reason isn't because of substance abuse problems.
Food and transportation for homeless youth. Both of those things, causes of youth homelessness and youth without shelter, and three causes of homelessness can be family problems, economic problems, or residential instability. With family problems, the person may have problems with the family members. It can be abuse physically, verbally, neglect, or sexually. This will lead them to run away from home. Also, in some cultures, families, when the teen reaches a certain age, they are kicked out of the house. The child may also be abusive or disrespectful to parents, and for that, they kick him or her out of the house. Economic problems. A big contributor to homelessness is the economy. High living costs makes it harder to afford shelter and food and transportation. These are three needs to survive in society. For this, one would need a job. If there's a low job rate, this makes it much harder to make a living. Without a job, one cannot afford shelter, food, or transportation. Places like Toronto has a high homeless rate because housing and living costs is very expensive. Teens who make little to no income are forced to the streets. Residential instability. The teen may have moved out or kicked out by the parents. They may not be able to afford rent, so their landlord kicks them out. They may go from house to house until they end up on the streets. Two organizations that work to help homeless youth is Youth Without Shelter and AVA's Initiative for Homeless Youth. Both of them provide shelter for the youth and helps them to get back up on their feet by counseling them, sending them to school, and getting them a job. So today I will be visiting the Youth Without Shelter shelter to interview one of their staff on youth homelessness and what they do at the shelter. So, what are some reasons why youth would end up here?
So, homeless youth are different from adult youth, adult homeless, because the number one reason isn't because of substance abuse problems or mental health issues. The number one reason why a youth would come here is because home is no longer safe for them to be. So, we help ages 16 to 24. At 16, you're legally classified as an adult, so by the City of Toronto. Anyone younger than that would go into foster care.
Okay, so what do you guys do for youth?
Well, we provide immediate sort of security and like in terms of your essential basic needs. So right away we provide shelter, food, water, and a safe place to be. Beyond that, we have quite a few resources for the youth. So everyone is assigned a case manager when they first come on board, or when they're first here. They can, they get new clothing, whatever they need, shoes, clothes. They get resources in terms of if they need, everything from prescriptions to mental health counseling to everything that they could possibly need is covered off in there with their case manager. And then we provide the extras. So we provide employment and life skills. So what that means is we try to prep every youth for the transition into stable housing. So we make sure that they have interview skills and resume writing and financial literacy. So that falls all under the employment and life skills team. So that way they can be successful when they transition out. We have a housing and aftercare team where their job is to actually physically help find housing. So getting them on all the wait lists for affordable housing in Toronto, making sure that they're accessing all the resources that they'll need in terms of social services. They have connections with landlords throughout the city that are empathetic to the situation of a homeless youth. So most homeless youth won't have a credit report, they won't have references, all the things you would need to land a rental. And then they follow up with the youth. So the aftercare program is really important because we do outreach into the community to make to do check-ins, to make sure they're feeling good, and that they're still on the right path, because we don't want anyone to slip through the cracks. And we also offer a food bank on site for any youth who have transitioned out and who can't afford to make ends meet. So they don't have to choose between paying rent or food. So they can come and access that food bank when they need it. We have hygiene products if they need it, etc. So those are some of the basics that we provide. We also have a special program. So there's 53 beds here, 33 of those for the emergency shelter, which is, but they can stay as long as they need to, as long as they're, under 25. But we also have a unique program called Stay in School, and we try to intervene as early as possible, so 16, 17, 18 years of age. And they're allowed to stay as long as they're in school full time and maintain a minimum grade point average. And it's a little bit different over there, but they get everything paid for: transit, school textbooks. They get bursaries from one of our donors if they go to post-secondary. And as long as you're in school full time, you can stay. So the average time people stay there is 3 to 4 years. So, and it's a 95% graduation rate, which is incredible because there's a direct correlation between education and homelessness. So people who don't graduate high school are 500 times more likely to be homeless.
That's great. You covered everything, yes?
That's everything? There's got to be some more.
So what do you say about economic problems affecting the youth?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard. The city is an incredible city, but it's a hard one because it's so unaffordable. Rent prices are extremely high. Like, I myself have felt the crunch because, as a single individual, it's really difficult to rent by yourself. So they're facing a lot of barriers into that entry, so that it's uncertain. Like, how are they going to afford rent if they, they're homeless now, so that's a huge barrier to overcome. And then there's also employment barriers. So they, for all the same reasons, like they might not have had a steady job before, or they don't have those references, they don't have that same sort of knowledge base on how to be successful in a job. So, part of us is working with them. We're piloting a social enterprise. And a social enterprise is where we actually run a business out of the shelter that exists to employ youth, to give them valuable employment and life skills, so that way they can be more successful as they transition out. So the entire existence of it. And then we sell a product, which will be, and then the profits go right back in to the social enterprise, paying more youth to be employed, and so on and so forth.
So what do you say about family problems such as abuse, or such as, families where they normally kick out the youth at a certain age?
So family problems so usually the number one reason for people leaving home is because it's no longer safe or they're no longer wanted. Our first job when a youth comes to us is to see if there's any window in reconciling with the family. So reuniting is our number one priority if it's possible, if it's safe. Sometimes kids become homeless for all sorts of reasons, and it could be because they had a huge fight and they just left. So if it's possible, the reuniting is less than 10% of the cases. So again, most people are here because it's not safe at home. So in those cases, I don't know all the specifics of each individual case, but yeah, it's a huge factor of why youth are here and why they have nowhere else to go. There's some cultural influence as well. Some families from different backgrounds, when you turn 18, you're a man, and that means you need to go out and make your own way in the world. So we've seen a few cases of that where that's the reason why a youth has left home, but an 18-year-old in Toronto, it's just not affordable. So even with a part-time job and trying to go to school, it's impossible almost to try to pay for rent on your own.
So what are some long-term effects on homelessness for you?
Well, one of the issues is mental health. So 86% of all homeless youth have experienced a mental health issue or crisis at some point in their life. And that sort of trauma will follow you, right? So that's something that they have to emotionally, like for whatever reason that caused that crisis, they're going to have to address that throughout their lifetime. So that'll be a barrier. I think it's that emotional mental health piece that will be their biggest, once we give them the tools, they have to then make sure that they're accessing all the right resources to deal with that specifically once they've left us. So making sure that they're always talking to someone and dealing with that mental health piece.
Other questions?
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Yes.
It was a pleasure meeting you. So here's some material.
Youth homelessness is a very big issue in society, and there are many organizations that are helping youth in society that need help. So today I visited Youth Without Shelter, and I talked with one of their staff, and she has told us lots about youth homelessness and what they do to help youth. So now you guys know a bit more about youth homelessness, and have a good day.